Okay, so this is looking at the examining report from the exam we did in November. So the idea is what an examiner report is. It basically identifies what students did well in the exam and also what they need to improve. So if you're going from a grade 3 to a grade 4, if you were someone who missed it by 1 to 10 marks, this is going to be the thing that's going to get you up to a grade 4. It's really important. If we repeat the same mistakes, whether it's you run out of time, you don't do enough quotes, you don't write enough, if you repeat the same mistakes, you will get the same grade. We want you to get a grade 4. We need you to improve. So let's remember, paper 2 exams, you need to do 2 of these tasks. You have an hour or an hour and 15 if you have extra time. So let's look at a typical example question. This was from an exam, but just to sort of give you an idea of the kind of question we're looking at in these exams, obviously you need to do 2. This one was on tattoos. Typical question: a teenage magazine has invited readers to write articles on topics that people have strong views about. The latest topic is tattoos. Are they just harmless fun and fashion, or something to regret in later life? You decide to write an article on the topic for the teenage magazine, giving your views. Write your article. Like all the questions, it's out of 20, and even that is something to remember in the exam. You've got 2 questions, they're both out of 20. That means you should spend half an hour on each. There's no point spending 45 minutes on one and 15 minutes on the other, because you'll get a half decent score on one and a rubbish score on the other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the exact things the examiners say, and then I will summarise towards the end. So the first thing they said was less successful responses, so as in rubbish answers, were often too brief and lacking in detail and clearly unfinished at the end of the exam. So that basically means you didn't write enough, you've run out of time. Often sentences often began with also or then. Remember, I've told you before, we want to use sentence starters. The most effective approach for candidates was to first decide whether they wanted to agree or disagree with the question. So what that means is, if we're looking at this tattoo question, for example, you've got to definitively be positive for tattoos or negative for tattoos. People who started with an introduction saying, well, I can see both sides to the argument, did not do well. The exam paper included the invitation to spend a little time planning, and where this was taken advantage of, it meant that perhaps 3 or 4 clear arguments could be marshalled, which in turn then allowed candidates to organise or shape their content in advance of beginning to write their letter. Summarise that into a sentence: do a plan. Okay, so the people who did the plan did really well. The people who didn't do a plan, it was all over the place. A lot of people think a plan, they don't bother doing a plan, even though we talked about, I mentioned 100 times before November, do a plan in your writing exam, short story and paper 2. Even though we said that so many times in What's Plan, when I went through your papers, hardly anyone did a plan. You might have done, but I would say out of 20 students, I would say 18 of you didn't do a plan. Okay, good responses frequently offered a brief opening explanation about the issue in question and why it had been felt necessary to write to the magazine. Okay, I'll summarise that in one sentence. Do a good intro, do a clear introduction. Don't just go straight in. Give an intro, say why you're writing. As they moved into the body of the letter, these more assured responses used each paragraph to argue a specific point, adding examples and details to support their assertions. So what that means is, if you did a plan and you did 3 clear points about tattoos, let's say they're memorable, they can honour a loved one, and you can get them removed. What that means is you did 5 or 6 sentences on each point. What you didn't do is you did 3 or 4 reasons in one paragraph. So doing a plan and doing your 5-point paragraphs, doing 1 point per paragraph is what they want you to do. Basic errors in spelling, punctuation, grammar and sentence construction all contributed to lower marks in VSSP, which means your spelling and punctuation mark. For many candidates, this will have contributed to the difference between them gaining the grade they wanted and the grade they actually achieved. So remember, to get a grade 4, they're not asking you to do colons or semicolons or brackets. The main things are capital letters, full stops, commas, apostrophes and tenses. If you proofread, if you get them right, you're doing well. In the lessons, our SPAG seems to be fine. It's all about proofreading. Again, a bit like the plan, we've talked about proofreading lots and lots. From talking to you and looking at your work, it's probably very rare that you spend 5 or 10 minutes checking your work at the end. If this exam is an hour, 25 minutes on both tasks, give yourself 10 minutes to check. Okay, so how to go from grade 3 to grade 4. So basically I'm going to summarise that examiner's report, and we're going to use this for our assessment. So we are going to not repeat the same mistakes. We're going to do this. We're going to go from a grade 4 to grade 4, hopefully higher. So first thing is, you've got to write at least 1.5 pages, if possible 2 pages, but at least 1.5 pages for each writing questions. When I looked at your work, a lot of you did under a page. You're not going to get any sort of mark for under a page. Before you start writing, decide if you agree or disagree with the question. So again, if it's a tattoo question, decide if you're for and against the tattoo. If it was are celebrities good role models, you've got to decide whether you think celebrities are good role models or they're not good role models. Don't go half and say, well, they could be or they couldn't be. You've got to be passionate for one side of the argument. Do a plan with an introduction. Each paragraph must focus on one specific point, and you must leave time to check for errors at the end of the exam. So these 5 tips, these 5 tasks, I guarantee if you do these, you will get the grade 4. Okay, if you do these, you will get the grade 4. Where people missed the most marks in the November exam was the writing. They did quite well on the reading, and on the writing, they were getting marks like 7 out of 20, 4 out of 20, where you need to get at least 10 out of 20. Okay, so the first tip was write at least 1.5 to 2 pages for each of the writing questions. Obviously, if you do it on a laptop, you're looking for about 400 words. But to be perfectly honest, the examiner, I've just shown you this because most of you are doing it on the pen and paper. Most of you, you don't have to, the examiner will not be counting your words. They won't be going 1, 2, 3. They won't be counting your words. If you do 1.5 to 2 pages, that will be absolutely fine. I'll give you an example. This is a very common example of the type of work I got. This was the whole person's task. I imagine they've not set out to write this much. They probably want to write more, but because they've run out of time, they've only done that. If you look at the second paragraph, for example, here, you can see it here. That is one sentence. One sentence is not a paragraph. That person got 5 out of 20, which would not be anywhere near a grade 4. However, if this person would have done that much, okay, so a page more, let's say it was the same quality. So let's say this person has written just a page more, is exactly the same quality as this. Just because they've done the word count, it would have gone up to 12 out of 20. So this wasn't actually bad. It was just because it was so short, it's not going to get a mark. So if you watched it, if you did this word count, you'd go up automatically about 7 marks and you'd get a grade 4 just because you've written enough. Okay, so again, person on the left wrote a lot, grade 5. The person on the right didn't write enough, grade 3. The other thing is no sentences more than 2 or 3 lines. So this is obviously talking about spag. This is what a classic example I got. This was one sentence. It goes from I think all the way down to at the moment, okay? It's not going to get you any marks. So what I've done is, and I'll show you on the next slide, I've just put an emoji where the sentence ends. So this is one whole sentence. If you're writing more than 2 or 3 lines without a sentence, it's wrong. You need to go back, put a sentence, a full stop, and a capital letter. Here's another. So here is one that did get a grade 5, one of my students. Here is when the full stops go in, and this is what you should be looking to do. It's a mixture between short sentences, medium sentences, long sentences, and that's what you should be looking to do. Again, really good tip as well that will get you a good marks with the examiner is I would do 1 short sentence per paragraph to grab the reader's attention, particularly if you want to exaggerate that point that you're making with the 1 short sentence. That is a good thing to do as well. When we're talking about spelling, punctuation and grammar for going from a grade 4 to a grade 3, other way around, grade 3 to a grade 4, these are things we're looking at. Like I said, we're not looking for the really complex thing. It's just full stops and less commas, apostrophes, paragraphs, there, and there, capital letters and basic spellings. If you do all this, you can impress the examiner just like this person's impressive. If you don't bother proofreading, this is the equivalent of what will happen to you. Okay, so you've got to make sure that you proofread at the end of the exam. Okay, the way we're going to do this is we're not just going to look at this video now and forget about it. When you do a piece of writing next week, you're basically going to have this to fill in every single time you give me a piece of work. It looks like we're coming back to college on March the 8th. So that means we've got this week and next week, and then we're back in college. So every piece of work you're going to give me, you're also going to attach it with this, where you're going to tick off that you've done each of these things. And quickly to go over, summarize again, last part of the video, and we'll go back to the lesson. From now on, at least 1.5 pages for each writing question. Before you start writing, you need to disagree or agree passionately. Don't just say you don't really care. Do a plan with an intro. Each paragraph must focus on one specific point. And you've got to leave yourself at least 5 minutes to proofread. Okay, so let's go back to me in the lesson now.